Hi everyone, I'm Jayne at Rockin' Worms. Hope you're having a good day. What I wanted to do right now is do a check-in on the Cocoon hatching bucket. This is the worm bag in a 5-gallon bucket update. I did that video about 10 days ago. I'll link it in the description in case you missed it. And I just want to go in and see how the cocoons are progressing. This is 3 breeder bins worth of cocoons, by the way. So these are my breeder bins over here. So it gives you an idea of what size they are. I sifted them out. I re-sifted again to concentrate the cocoons, and I did a lot of cocoon picking and then put them in this bucket with the leftover bedding from those bins. Okay, so let's go in and see what's going on here. All right, right away I see that there is a cocoon right here on top of the paper. I don't know how I got there or what it's doing there, but it's hanging out. I'll, kind of shake that down in with its buddies. Also want to note that the paper is still damp. Okay, it's not soggy wet or anything, but it's still moist. So this bin is retaining moisture, which is actually good. We want the bag not to dry out quickly, because that just means we have to go in and maintain it more often, and who has time for that? So let's now remove, like I said, I'm going to try to flick this cocoon down. There we go. I think it went down into that corner there. All right, so I'm going to move the paper here and see what we got. Okay, I'm just gonna put this on the lid. All right, so bunch of cocoons right on top, you can see. And some of the leaf litter. Here is, again, right on top, this is a baby worm. So some of the cocoons are hatching. So that's good news. All right, so I don't want to dig in this worm bag in a bucket because, the top space here is limited and it's just difficult. So one of the benefits of doing the worm bag in a 5-gallon bucket and using these binder clips is they come off super easy. The bag drops down because of the weight, which is why you need the binder clips to hold it at the height you want. I'm going to pick up the whole bag and I'm going to put it in this bin. And I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I want to show you what the inside of this bucket looks like. It's, quote, clean and dry. None of my buckets are clean, but you can see that it's dry. So I haven't had any liquid leach out into the bottom, which if it did, it would be fine, but it would also indicate that I'm probably putting in too much moisture. Okay, so the fact that there is no liquid seeping out is good. Now, of course, the flip side of that is I don't want my bedding to be too dry, and that's what we're going to check out next. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to fold this bag down a little bit, or a lot of it. And, I don't want it to flip out the back here. And I'm just going to tip it over. And have it come out into the work bin. I'm just using one of my, empty regular worm bins that I use. I buy these bins at Walmart online. They have a pricing that if you buy 8 of them at a time, you get a little price break. They come out to be under $6, just under $6 each. So I think it's a pretty good, a pretty good deal. I do have to, wait and see how long the bins last. I do want to get some value out of it. But right now, these bins, generally, I've bought some in February and then again, some in March. So they're not too old. All right, what I'm doing here is I'm just going to set the worm bag back up with the clips. So when I'm done working with the worms, I can scoop them up and put them back inside. and this bag is ready to go. Okay, so back to the bin. And you can see that there has been some compression of the bedding into the shape of the bag. That is very normal to happen in these types of worm bags because the weight distribution is all vertical onto the, the bottom. It also is why, by the way, just as an interest, why continuous flow through bins, CFTs, where they're open on the bottom except for closely spaced rods, don't have all the castings that are on the bottom of this open bin just fall through onto the floor. The pressure, the compression of the damp bedding and the weight of the subsequent layers of the bedding towards the top of the bin make it, stick enough together if you have enough moisture in there. All right, I hope that made some sense. All right, so what I'm gonna do is just flip this over and just gently break it apart and see what we've got. Okay, I only took off a little bit. Look at all the baby worms. Can you see all the baby worms? I know it's hard to see the whole thing on the camera, but I can see baby worms just all over this top layer. Actually, it's a little bit below the top layer. This is the bottom of the layer I just broke off. And again, you can see all the baby worms in here, along with some obviously cocoons that haven't hatched, because again, they've only been in this hatching bucket for 2 weeks. So the fact that I've got so many babies already hatching is good news. All right, let's just continue to break it up. One of the things I wanted to check when I did this is the very moisture level to make sure that it wasn't too dry, right? We just mentioned that a couple minutes ago, that the paper was moist, but we wanted to make sure the bedding was moist, and you can see that it is. It's holding together, but look at how easy it breaks open, okay? This is not mud. This is not overly wet. This is actually pretty darn close to perfect. Moist enough to make the worms happy, but not too moist to make it, difficult, especially for the wisps, okay? For the wisps to go through, they'll struggle a little bit more to move around if the bedding is, soppy wet and muddy. But if it's this nice, moist, light texture, the, wisps can move through easily to, find where they're happy to hang out and to find food. I do put in, as you may know from some of my previous videos, I do put in some older worms to kind of seed the cocoon bucket. I feel that putting in some already hatched worms facilitate the hatching of the cocoons, whether they, signal the cocoons to hatch because, they're saying, hey, this environment is survivable, come out, or if their movement, provides some type of, vibration. Let's go with vibration that again can maybe signal the cocoons that the environment is good and they are safe to hatch. So this is just one of the worms I had put in to do that babysitting job, if you will. All right. And also you can see on my glove in the crack here between the two fingers, look how tiny that worm is. This worm must only be, a couple hours old or maybe, a day. But it is a worm. You can see it has the pink color on it. If it was a pot worm, it would be all white. I've learned more about pot worms in the last, couple weeks because I didn't know how to recognize them so much. But now I'm better. I'm learning too, guys. We can all learn. So these are definitely worms because they have the pink tinge. Okay. Let me just gently drop them in. Okay. All right. So I'm actually almost done with checking this bin because all I really wanted to do was see if I had hatching going on, which I clearly do. I wanted to check the moisture level, which I feel is very good. More baby worms, very good. Still have, here's a whole bunch of cocoons. Still have a lot of cocoons that need to hatch yet. Again, totally expected at a 2-week period of time. And I also feel that there's plenty of natural food in here, okay? When I set up my breeder bins, I set them up with sifted cow manure, pre-composted bedding, and in this bin, or in these 3 bins, I also use leaves. And you can see that there's still lots of leaves left in here, and I'm sure there are remnants of you know, the worm chow and things I mix in as well. So I was prepared to feed this bin with worm chow, but honestly, I don't think it's necessary. I think they're doing great with the natural leaf food in here and the residuals left over from the breeder bin setup. So I'm just gonna leave it. It looks great. Why mess with perfection, right? So now all I'm gonna do is just by handfuls, just to get the volume down a little bit, and scoop it back into the bag. I was also prepared to add more moisture, but you know what I think I'm probably gonna do is I'll give it a little spray of moisture on the top when I'm done putting these guys back, and you know, that'll drip through the all the bedding because of gravity, and that'll just give it a little extra moisture, but nothing crazy. All right, I can see that I put the bag up too high with the clips. So you know what? Real easy to fix. I just pick up a clip and I let the bag fall down a little bit with the weight of the bedding. Boom, done. How's that for easy? Easy adjustments to have it at the height you need it to be, you want it to be. And that's, again, one of the really great benefits of this worm bag and a 5-gallon bucket system. Okay, I am just now putting this in. Okay, pretty good. Now, just as an extra bonus here for you, I'm going to mention one of my favorite worm tools. And I've mentioned this in other videos, but it's a cheapo $1 3-inch paintbrush. Get them at any of the big box stores. I got these at Harbor Freight. They had a special on for $1, so I picked up, 4 or 5 of them. And I use this paintbrush almost every time I'm in my worm bins because the worm bedding just gets everywhere. And all I'm doing is taking my bin that I had the bag and the worms in, and I'm using it under the table, kind of like a dustpan, and I'm just quickly brushing the bedding, any cocoons, which I don't think any cocoons fell out, but you know what, it happens. And if there was a little baby worm or a regular worm that got out, I can gently brush it in to the bin, clean up my table pretty good. There we go. And then I also use it to brush down my bins because I'm going to end up putting this bin back to work. And I want this not to have the contents of one bin mixing in with another bin. Now, I just have red wigglers, so it's not as important for me, but if you have multiple species, you really have to work hard to keep them separate if that's what you want to do. So making sure your bins are really clean so you don't accidentally get a cocoon of one breed in a cocoon or in a bin of another breed, because once you do that, you're kind of done. takes a lot of time and effort to separate out species if you accidentally mix them. All right, so that's that. Now, like I said, I wanted to give these guys just a quick spritz. Cocoons do seem to hatch better when it's moister than what this bedding is. This bedding was beautiful, but I'm just going to give it a little extra boost of moisture to make those cocoons happy, but not too much that it's going to, you know, flow through the bottom. I really don't want liquid coming out of the bottom. You don't want liquid coming out of your bottom either. That sounds funny, doesn't it? Okay. All right. So now I'm just going to put the newspaper back on to help hold the moisture in. And that is good enough. Close enough is good enough a lot of times. All right. And, oh, you know what? Here, one last thing. Look at this. There's a little baby worm on the lid. It probably was on the newspaper. And when I put the newspaper on the lid, when I was working in the bin, it, you know, came with it. So guess what I'm going to use? This little paintbrush and gently knock it out. Because if I tried to pick it up with my fingers, you know, I might be okay, or I could accidentally squish them. And I don't want to do that. So let's give the guy a little break and just use a gentle paintbrush to get him inside with all his friends. Okay, there we are. That's the check-in. Everything's looking great. I'm going to put down the binder clips here just so I can put the lid on a little bit more. And we're done. We're done. So I hope you found that interesting and informative. And I am always yours in the dirt, Jayne.